What is up, guys? GT Sali here. The wait is almost over. Only one more day until I have my hands on Uncharted 4: A Thief's End. And if you're watching this video, I'm sure you will as well. But in case you've never played the first games, or you just want to refresh your memory on the Thief's beginning before jumping into A Thief's End, I made a quick recap of all the stories leading up to Uncharted 4. It's gonna be in 6 parts, so tune in every day until May 14th. I will be going over the plots of all the console games, as well as some comics and a Vita game. Obviously there will be spoilers, but if you plan on playing the games, I've left enough out that there will still be plenty of surprises during your gameplay. So let's get started. First in the timeline is DC's comics titled simply Uncharted. The story starts with Nathan Drake and Harry Flynn in the jungle near a plane crash site. Pinned down by unknown enemy fire, the duo managed to escape with treasure and trinkets recovered from the crashed plane when Drake shoots the gas tank on an enemy truck, exploding and taking out many of the attacking men. Next, the two are seen regrouping in a hotel room, dividing the spoils of their expedition. Flynn leaves with most of the gold, Nate claiming all he wanted was the journal they also recovered. Flynn happily obliges and heads off. Before his departure, he meets Victor Sullivan. They appear to have known each other, but the two are not on good terms. After exchanging insults, Flynn leaves. It is revealed Drake was to obtain the journal for a contractor, the Ludlows. However, he has his own agenda and decides to try and decode the journal before handing it over. Nate and Sully spend the night at a beach bar. While Nate tries to decipher the journal, Sully joins the party at the bar. The next morning, Nathan finally decrypts the text, discovering it is the flight journal of Sir Richard Byrd. In his journal, it states that he was part of a secret mission for the Russians to hide the mysterious Amber Room, a chamber lined with amber panels, backed with gold, and decorated with various antiques and mirrors, which was looted from Russia during World War II by the Nazis. The journal goes on to say that the Russians reclaimed the Amber Room after the war, and Byrd was hired to hide it once again. The only clue to the whereabouts of the Amber Room were hidden on an amber seal, taken straight from the walls of the Amber Room itself by Byrd. Digressing, the two head off to meet the Ludlows, the brother and sister pair who hired Drake to obtain the journal. They greet Michael Ludlow and his sister, Rose Daughtry. Nate then hands over the journal. Rose questions why there is sand in the pages, and Nate states his curiosity got the better of him and he checked it out. This is dismissed by the pair, finding for themselves that it is all in code. Drake receives his payment for retrieving the journal, and the two part ways, with the Ludlows heading to the auction where the Amber Seal is being sold. Nate and Sully plan to steal the Amber Seal from the black market auction being held in Volkov Castle, Ukraine. The two arrive the next night and scout out the castle grounds, marking patrol routes, the number of guards, and a secret entrance. But while out performing his reconnaissance, Nathan is discovered by a fellow explorer, Chloe Frazier. She points her gun at him, saying, "Always knew we'd meet someday, just didn't think I'd have to kill you." And this is where issue 1 ends. Issue 2 begins with Drake and Sully heavily disguised watching an auction for the infamous Amber Seal. They assume that getting a look at the seal will be easy. However, what we are led to believe is the villain of the comic, Mykola Rusnak, is introduced. Sully believes that Chloe, whom Drake met the previous night, may have tipped the mob leader off about their intentions. The comic then flashes back to the night before and where issue 1 ended, where Drake is able to escape Chloe by throwing dust into her eyes. We then return to the auction to find out that the seemingly spoiled twins, the Ludlows, are also present and hoping to get a look at the Amber Seal, which will, along with Richard Byrd's cipher, give the location of the Amber Room itself. We find out that Chloe is actually working for Rusnak after he approaches Drake and is suspicious about his presence at an invite-only auction. Luckily, with a little help from her, Drake and Sully manage to escape and decide that with so much interest in the Amber Seal, the only way they can get ahead and hopefully find the Amber Room first is to steal it before the viewing of the seal is open to the public. That night, Drake breaks in to where the seal is being held before the auction and discovers that he was not the first to think of stealing the seal. Chloe manages to get there before him, and after a quick scuffle between the two, they manage to find the seal, and Drake makes a note of the code on the seal which can be used with Byrd's cipher. Chloe unintentionally sets off the security alarm, but fortunately the two manage to escape. Chloe flees while Drake, who has the Amber Seal, attempts to contact Sully on his headset, but there is no response. At that point, Nate is picked up by a dark black car and forced into the back seat, only to find Sully taken hostage by the Ludlow siblings. At a restaurant, the siblings threaten to kill Sully unless Drake deciphers the code on the seal, which he unwillingly does, and discovers that Agartha, where the Amber Room is supposedly held, is somewhere in the North Pole. The siblings then reveal that they are descendants of Thomas Doughty, who is a companion of Sir Francis Drake. until he was accused of witchcraft by Sir Francis Drake and executed. Michael and Rose plan to avenge their family name by finding the Amber Room. The Dowdies tie Drake and Sully up and notify Rusnak of the thief who stole his amber seal from the auction, and the duo departs. Drake and Sully are able to break free of their bonds, with Drake revealing that he sent the siblings on a wild goose chase by giving them the wrong coordinates to Agartha. Before the two could leave the restaurant, Rusnak and his henchmen appear, aiming their guns at them, and this is where issue 2 ends. Issue 3 begins with Nathan Drake and Victor Sullivan tied up and blindfolded against the wall after getting caught by the Russian mob. Nate doesn't want to give up the information about the Amber Room, so Rusnak points a gun to Nate's head, about to shoot him, when out of nowhere, Chloe Fraser shows up and saves the duo from Rusnak by blinding him and his men with a flash grenade. While the trio make their escape in a jeep, Rusnak gives chase and with a mounted machine gun on his vehicle, begins firing at them. But this proves to be vain as Chloe pulls a risky maneuver that sends Rusnak and his men off the cliff, killing them. While arguing, Chloe says that she deserves to be in the group after saving them, which both men agree to. A few days later, they get on a train to go to the North Pole. Michael and Rose Dowdy learn that Drake gave them the wrong coordinates and spot him, Sully, and Chloe trying to hijack their plane on the airstrip. The siblings and their mercenaries force Sully to fly the plane to Agartha, which he reluctantly complies with. The plane suffers a rough landing when Sully flies into the gorge, leading to the entrance of Agartha. Michael orders Sully to stay behind and repair the damages to the plane while they explore the cave. While exploring the cave, they find Sir Richard Byrd's encampment with the Amber Room destroyed. Michael is devastated by the fact that he can't avenge his family name and wants to kill Nate for revenge. However, Rose and Mike get into an argument. Rose believes that they can still restore their family name with the discovery of Agartha. While they are arguing, Nate and Chloe escape through the doors leading to Agartha, and the siblings and their mercenaries realize they have disappeared and pursue them. While running, they find a hand-drawn map on a wall, with Sir Richard Byrd warning them about huge monsters protecting the area. They realize the doors weren't trying to keep things from coming in, but to keep something from getting out. Drake and Chloe continue to run as the Dowdies are right behind them. They jump over a gap and cross a bridge made of World War II planes that is suspended over a river of lava. Later on, Chloe accidentally falls into a hole and Drake slides down a rope to go save her. She is unharmed, but the Dowdies and their mercenaries catch up and hop down into the hole with them. Before Michael can kill Nate, the group sees yellow, glowing eyes staring at them in the darkness. The group is surrounded by gray-skinned creatures with white hair and long, red, sharp nails, known as the Smoking Gods. The creatures kill off the Dowdies' hired mercenaries and scratches Nate's back. Chloe saves Drake by shooting the beast off of him, and Michael saves Rose, who is being attacked by a Smoking God. Chloe picks up one of the dead mercenaries' rocket launchers and starts firing at the holes the Smoking Gods were crawling out of, to cave in the tunnel behind them. At the end of the tunnel, the group finds Agartha. As the Dowdies marvel at the sight of the city, Chloe takes a picture of a flying machine with her camera. Nate is suddenly shot in the shoulder by Michael, but when Chloe is about to kill Michael, Rose fights Chloe. With Rose defeating her, Nate and Chloe are held at gunpoint by Michael, as Rose walks up a set of stairs leading to a wall of diamonds. But Michael is hurrying his sister up. Nate realizes the diamonds shine like the sun because there is lava flow behind it. As soon as Michael pulls his sister away once more, Rose shoots her brother, killing him in the process and kicking his dead body down the stairs. When she pulls one of the diamonds out of the wall, Nate and Chloe begin to run, as that diamond was the main thing holding the lava back, which starts to flow in the room fast and burns Rose to death as Nate and Chloe escape. The story then flashes back to an unseen moment in issue 3, as Nate, Chloe, and Sully travel to the Arctic via train. Sully is asleep while Nate and Chloe talk in the seat behind him. Chloe questions him about his life as a treasure hunter, but Nate doesn't have any regrets, saying, "Instead of being stuck behind a desk, I'm headed to the North Pole looking for lost treasure. How could I have any regrets?" I immediately thought of Nathan Drake stamping papers in Uncharted 4 when I read that panel. The story then flashes back to the present, as Nate and Chloe flee the collapsing city of Agartha. As they run, the Smoking Gods pursue them. Nate and Chloe reach a hole in the wall as the lava drowns most of the Smoking Gods. Escaping back into the tunnels, however, the tunnel begins to collapse, dropping Nate himself into the river of lava, but he lands on a floating rock and Chloe leaves him, claiming she has an idea. Nate hops from floating rock to floating rock until he reaches a floating Second World War era plane. As Nate is about to sink into the lava, Sully's plane arrives with Chloe leaning out the door to grab his hand and pull him on board. The lava continues to chase him through the tunnels, but Sully is able to fly the plane out from the earth through a volcano. However, the plane is caught in the volcanic eruption and they crash into the sea. Nate, Sully, and Chloe bail out and wash up on the shores somewhere tropical. The story continues in a montage, with the trio drinking together, Sully flirting with two beautiful young women, Chloe visiting Nate's hotel room, their clothes strewn across the floor, and finally, of Chloe driving away alone in the dawn. Over the montage, she speaks with her employer via phone, stating that both Nate and Sully are unaware of her goals, to secure images of the Agarthian flying machine for her employer. Chloe confirms that Agartha was destroyed and the Dadoutries were killed. When her employer asks about her late-night liaison with Nate, she tells Roman to have her money. Meanwhile, Nate wakes up to find the message from Chloe on the pillow next to him. "See you around, cowboy, no regrets." Later, Nate meets Sully at the dock, and when Nate tells him Chloe has gone, he wrongly comments that he doubts they've seen the last of her. Sully pulls Nate after him. He's got a job for them in the United States. Sully shows Nate their transport, a rusty old boat, since they didn't exactly walk away from the Arctic with a lot of treasure. Nate points out that they did walk away, and sometimes that's enough. Next in the timeline is Golden Abyss. It takes place a few years before Drake's fortune and begins in the middle. Nathan Drake is scaling a temple on the side of a mountain somewhere in Central America, which is swarming with mercenaries hired by Jace and Dante, who have ordered to kill Nate on sight. Orders which they carry out by firing an RPG at him while he climbs the side of a temple. The story then flashes back 2 weeks, revealing that Nate had been hired as an expert by Dante to investigate a dig site on a ridge in central Panama. At the dig site, they encounter Marissa Chase, Dante's partner, who as a result of her distrust had tailed them. Dante receives an erratic radio call from Robert Guerrero, the leader of a revolutionary army based in the surrounding forest, and leaves. Both unimpressed that Dante had not informed them of Guerrero's presence, they find the remains of a group of Spanish conquistadors who were murdered via poisoning by forces unknown. The only clue to why the soldiers were killed is a grave marker carved with a symbol Nate recognizes as being of Visigoth origin. Chase reveals to Nate that she possesses an amulet that Dante doesn't know about, and refuses to let Nate examine it unless he agrees to her offer of partnership. But before they can learn more, they are interrupted by the arrival of Guerrero's men. As Chase refuses to use a gun, Nate kills them all, and the two attempt to escape. It is revealed that Dante has been working with Guerrero, and Nate tries to escape by attacking the soldiers, but he is clubbed into unconsciousness. Nate wakes up in a warehouse that also happens to be on fire. Escaping, he finds himself in a shanty town that acts as Guerrero's base, and meets up with Chase. She explains she escaped Guerrero after a brief interrogation and set the warehouse alight as a diversion. Nate decides to rescue Dante and escape, but Chase refuses to leave without her amulet. So reluctantly, Nate agrees to help her retrieve it. After dispatching a number of Guerrero's guards, they reach his office where they learn that Dante has already cut a deal with him and given Guerrero all the research he and Chase collected. Nate and Chase retrieve the amulet from Guerrero's office and narrowly escape the compound while being shot at. Chase takes Nate to the house of Vincent Perez, her grandfather, and explains that he found the amulet among the ruins on the ridge and spent 20 years trying to figure it out. The year before he was diagnosed with terminal cancer, which made him desperate to solve the mystery, he contacted Dante, who was able to negotiate with Guerrero for access to the site. But 3 months ago, he disappeared, and Dante took over the excavation. In Perez's study, Nate discovers the symbol from the grave marker on the cover of a book about the Siete Ciudades, an obscure Christian religious order with roots stretching back to the Visigoths. When the Islamic Moors invaded Spain in the 8th century, legends tell of 7 Spanish bishops who set sail with the treasure of Spain. Apparently, they went on to found 7 cities of gold, and the Siete Ciudades was an order dedicated to finding these cities. Using Perez's research, Nate is able to translate the words written around the edge of the symbol. The sword of Stephen shall bear witness to our sacrifice in the chamber of the seven fathers. Perez also noted that this chamber would have been a holy place, a sanctum for the secrets of the order, and a potential location for it. Nate accepts Chase's earlier offer to be partners as they depart. Arriving at this location, Spanish ruins next to a large sinkhole, Nate and Chase enter catacombs at the bottom of the sinkhole and find the chamber of the seven fathers, along with Perez's camp and his journal. The journal sheds more light on the city Ciudades, specifically referring to the Frere Marcos de Niza, a Spanish priest who is also a high priest of the city Ciudades, who was noted for claiming to have discovered the 7 cities of gold. As it turned out, Marcos lied, and his 7 cities were simply Native American villages. When the journal refers to Marcos' guide, Esteban the Moor, Nate realizes the sword of Stephen is the sword of Esteban. After solving a puzzle, Nate and Chase discover Esteban's tomb and find the body of Vincent Perez in there. While Chase mourns her grandfather, Nate takes the sword of Stephen. Engraved upon the blade are symbols, which Nate takes charcoal rubbings of before he returns to Chase. He tells her that when they find Quivera, it will be Perez's discovery, but she turns him down. It will be their discovery as partners. They're interrupted by the arrival of Dante, who takes Chase hostage right before Guerrero arrives in time to hear Dante insult him. Guerrero then calmly drops Dante off a balcony and forces Nate to hand over the sword of Stephen while he leaves with Chase as a hostage. Dante regains consciousness as the fall wasn't fatal, and he and Nate work together to escape the sinkhole that was rigged by Guerrero's explosives. They kill a multitude of Guerrero's men trying to save Chase before she is taken, but when they finally get out of the sinkhole, they are too late. Dante vows to go hire his own army and go after Guerrero, while Nate seeks help from Sully. Nate has assembled the charcoal rubbings of the symbols on the sword of Stephen, revealing a map to the location of the Temple of the Serpents, which Frere Marcos stated guards the gateway to hell. Nate and Sully make their way to the temple, while Dante's mercenaries fight Guerrero's revolutionary army. Along the way, Sully falls down a hole and busts his leg. He suggests that Nate should go on alone while he steals a helicopter to be their getaway vehicle. Nate continues alone to the Temple of the Serpents and repeats the scene at the start of the game. Nate survives the RPG blast and makes his way into the caves beneath the mountain, where he learns that Dante's mercenaries have Guerrero trapped in the lower caverns. Nate descends to a large doorway at the base of the cave, where Guerrero's men have Chase captive and are setting up explosives on the supporting columns. After Nate deals with them, Chase refuses to leave. Quivera is just behind the door. Nate realizes that her amulet is in fact the key to Quivera and uses it to open the combination lock on the door. Beyond the doorway, the caves go deeper until they end with a large lake which they must cross. Beyond the lake is another doorway, again opened with the amulet, granting access to the golden abyss. This cavern has numerous enormous veins of gold all over its walls, and in the center is the throne of gold. Sitting on the throne is the corpse of Esteban, impaled through the heart with the dagger of Marcos de Niza. Esteban was a Sede Ciudades offering, a sacrifice of blood to seal the gates of hell. Before Nate and Chase can take the dagger to use as evidence to rewrite history, a Geiger counter in her pack indicates the gold is radioactive. Dante arrives and reveals he knew about the treasure being radioactive and plans to strip mine Quivera and litter the gold through the black market. Nate and Dante get into a fist fight, with Nate being the victor. Nate and Chase leave Dante by the throne of gold, and Chase detonates the bombs in the caverns to seal it. As she and Nate flee, the caverns begin to collapse, presumably killing Dante and any of his mercenaries still in the cave system. As they reach the exit, Guerrero appears and fires an RPG into a stone column, causing it to collapse and fall onto Chase's leg. Guerrero reloads the RPG, all that is left of his army, and says he has only one cause left without his army: to die with honor. Nate confronts Guerrero, and during a fist fight, he is able to trick Guerrero into charging out onto a burning bridge, which collapses and plunges the general into the abyss. Nate returns to Chase and manages to lever the stone block off her leg before the two flee to the exit, where they find Sully waiting with his helicopter to winch them out. They land on the pyramid in the valley to splint Chase's leg, and while Sully checks the chopper has enough gas to get them home, Nate reveals he saved Chase's amulet. She takes it and hurls it into the jungle, stating that Marcos was right. It belongs in hell. Sully interrupts before the two can kiss, and as they head back to the helicopter, begins telling his story about the nurses in Buenos Aires.
If you're gonna break your leg, Argentina's the place to do it.
You know, the last time you told this story, they were from Sao Paulo.
Hey, would you just let the man finish?
Trust me, you don't want him to finish this story.
Anyway, the little one. Her name was Maria. Oh, Maria. The lips on that girl.
And her brother was Isabel.
Next in the timeline is Uncharted Eye of Indra, which takes place about a year after the events of Golden Abyss. The comic begins with the interrogation and torture of Nathan Drake as he is beaten by Daniel Pinkerton, an American crime lord living in Indonesia, to reveal as of yet undisclosed information. As Nate is tortured, he jokes with Pinkerton and refuses to tell him anything. A flashback reveals that Pinkerton had hired Nate to find the Eye of Indra, a prized artifact of great value and the main entry to the three treasures of Indra. After having a fallout with the previous finder, he employs Nate, who promises to track down the treasure in return for a handsome sum of money. While investigating the files handed to him in a bar, Nate is harassed by a couple of petty thugs and gets into a scrap. It is broken up by a woman named Rika, owner of the bar. Nate offers to pay for the furniture broken in return for some help translating the documents. Later in Rika's bedroom, the pair are stunned to discover that the eye is hidden within the other treasures of Indra, which is locked in Pinkerton's safe. Nate does not tell Pinkerton of this discovery, instead opting to steal it from him. Continuing with Pinkerton's interrogation, water is poured over Nate's head, who is still refusing to break. Pinkerton threatens to step the torture up a notch by electrifying him. Flashing back again, we see that Nate slept with Rika. Nate is concerned with Rika helping him take the amulet from Pinkerton, but Rika reveals that she has told someone already. Nate is angry, and as they argue, two pirates barge through the door, brandishing handguns. Nate fails in reaching for his own gun and is forced into another brawl, but he and Rika are outnumbered and taken hostage. But Rika is freed when Eddie Raja, one of Nate's past rivals, enters the room. Both men are confused as to how they have met up again, but it is revealed that Eddie is Rika's brother, whom she had told about the job. Eddie is furious when he deduces that Nate and Rika have slept together. Rika apologizes for telling Eddie without consulting Nate first, though asks how they know each other. Nate explains how Eddie had planned to dick him over on a past job, but Nate had beat him to the punch. Back to the present, it is seen that Eddie has been captured also, and is tied back to back with Nate. Eddie states that he will kill Nate himself if he tells Pinkerton anything, before shouting his signature phrase,
"No one, and I mean no one, messes with Eddie Raja."
After the fight in Rika's bedroom beforehand, Eddie has calmed down and reluctantly agreed to work with Nate, but does not trust him. Again to the interrogation, Eddie suggests to Pinkerton that they have an accomplice outside. A flashback to 1 hour before their capture reveals that Eddie and Nate persuade Rika to stay behind to cover them. To create a distraction, Eddie blows up Pinkerton's cars as they both sneak into the mansion. Back to the present, Pinkerton already knows about Rika and has her captured. He orders his guards to bring her in and continues,
"Now, unless we're expecting more company, you'd be wise to come clean about my amulet."
Pinkerton threatens to shock Rita unless Nate reveals the location of the eye. At this point, Nate seems to break and tells him that the eye is in the safe. Pinkerton is skeptical at first, but then realizes that is the reason Nate and Eddie are at his manor to begin with. Another flashback occurs to 1 hour prior as Nate and Eddie are in a fight with Pinkerton's guards following the explosion of the cars. After battling their way through the office and barricading themselves inside, Eddie plants an explosive on the safe. However, the detonator is broken, and all the others were used on the cars. As both bicker about the situation, Rika informs Nate via walkie-talkie that Pinkerton and more of his goons are headed his way. Returning to the interrogation, Pinkerton proceeds to break open the Indra artifacts to obtain the eye. As he inspects it, Rika bites the arm of the guard holding her hostage, and she is thrown aside into a desk. Pinkerton tells Rika that he is truly sorry that she was caught up in the affair, but Rika hits back that he should be, before revealing Eddie's concealed golden gun and firing upon Pinkerton and his guards. The guards are killed, but Pinkerton lies wounded. Nate and Eddie say to themselves that they cannot believe their plan worked. A dying Pinkerton grabs Nate as he picks up the Eye of Indra and furiously asks if he planned this. Nate tells him it was more of an improvisation. 45 minutes before being captured, Nate came up with a plan after Eddie's detonator failed to get caught. As he was out of bullets and Eddie was down to his last clip, he took Eddie's golden gun and slipped it under the desk before telling Rika what to do. Pinkerton tells Nate he had better finish him off, but Rika saves him the trouble and violently executes him. She concludes that they got what they came for and must now get out of there. The following morning, the trio stand at a dock discussing a fine job. However, Rika betrays both Nate and Eddie by taking the amulet for herself, holding them at gunpoint and repeating Nate's earlier statement that she simply beat him to the punch. Nate assures Rika that he will find her. She replies that she will look forward to it. As they watch her sail away, Eddie orders Nate not to say a word. 3 days later, Nate relaxes at a beach bar, telling his friend Sully of the recent events. Sully finds the story amusing and tells Nate that he should have known better than to have teamed up with Eddie or any of his family, but questions how Nate now plans to find Sir Francis Drake's coffin without any money.
Actually, I already got something lined up. Of course, I'm gonna need your help on this one.
Oh boy.
It took us 3 weeks, but here we are. I can't believe this is the actual altar where the sacrificial rituals took place. Come on, let's take a closer look.
I meet with her tomorrow.
Get out of here. What the hell did you tell her?
Nothing. Just that I found the site of Sir Francis Drake's coffin. Best part, her producers are gonna pay for the whole damn thing.
I'll believe it when I see it, kid.
Just 3 weeks after the events of Eye of Indra, Uncharted Drake's Fortune takes place. The game opens with Nathan Drake recovering Sir Francis Drake's coffin, which was buried at sea. He is assisted by journalist Elena Fisher, there to record the events for a documentary. The coffin is empty except for a diary written by Sir Francis Drake, whom Nate believes to be his ancestor. Proving that Drake had faked his death, the diary points to the location of El Dorado, the fabled city of gold. Nate and Elena are then ambushed by a band of pirates, and their boat is destroyed. They are rescued by Victor Sullivan in his seaplane. At shore, Nate details Sully on his findings, and they decide upon leaving Elena behind, after fearing that her publishing the documentary would attract rivals. They travel to a region in the Amazon rainforest, where they find ruins of an ancient South American civilization, and clues that suggest El Dorado is a large gold statue that was removed long ago. Angered, Sully reveals to Nate that he is in debt and was particularly relying on this job. Searching further, Nate and Sully discover a long-abandoned German U-boat stuck in the Amazon River. Nate gives Sully the diary to hold on to while he investigates. Nate discovers a dead crew, a missing page from Sir Francis Drake's diary, and a map that points to a southern tropic island where the statue was likely taken. Before they can leave, Nate and Sully are found by Gabriel Roman, a competitive treasure hunter who has hired the services of mercenaries led by Navarro, Roman's lieutenant, and an archaeologist with extensive knowledge of the region and the statue itself. It's revealed that Sully's debt is with Roman, and he had promised Roman to pay him off with the fortune from El Dorado. However, Roman chose to follow up on Sully's information and find the treasure himself. They take the map from Nate and prepare to kill him, but Sully tries to intervene and is shot instead. Suddenly, the U-boat explodes, the result of a torpedo Nate accidentally triggered. He uses the distraction to flee and runs into Elena, who had followed them from the dock. They manage to escape in Sully's plane to the island where the statue is believed to be. After being shot down near the island and separated, Nate travels to the wreckage of the plane. While combating the pirates that had ambushed him earlier, he retrieves a map and spots Elena's parachute hanging from a nearby fort. At the fort, Nate is captured by the pirates, revealed to be led by Eddie Raja, one of his old rivals. Elena rescues Nate, and they escape the fort to a flooded city. The two find out through a logbook in the customs house that the statue was moved further inland. Elena records the supposedly dead Sully working with Roman and Navarro, causing her to believe he is a traitor. Nate is unconvinced, and heading north they decide to follow him to the monastery. After confronting him, Sully explains that the diary Nate gave him blocked the bullet and convinced Roman to let him help. In fact, Sully had been feeding them useless information to buy himself time. Nate and Elena find a series of maze-like tunnels below the monastery. In these tunnels, Nate overhears an argument between Roman, Navarro, and Eddie. Roman hired Eddie to capture Nate and keep the island secure, with the reward being a share of the gold of El Dorado. After Nate's escape, Roman doubts Eddie's ability to do his job further and ignores his superstitious claim that something cursed on the island is killing his men. Roman dismisses Eddie and his crew. Nate and Elena find a passage leading to a large treasure vault, in which they find the body of Drake, assuming that he died on the island searching for the treasure. Before they move on, they encounter Eddie running for his life, chased by mutated humans possessing incredible speed and strength. The creatures are the Spanish descendants, and Eddie is killed when one drags him into a pit. Nathan and Elena escape to find themselves in an abandoned German bunker. Nate ventures out into the base to restore power to the bunker. Along the way, he discovers that the Germans had sought the statue during World War II, but that, like the Spaniards before them, learned that the statue was cursed, which mutated them. Sir Francis, knowing of the statue's power, was actually trying to keep it on the island by destroying the ships and flooding the city before he too was killed by the mutants. Nate attempts to return to Elena but finds her captured by Roman and Navarro. He reunites with Sully outside the monastery and tells him about the curse. Under the monastery, Nate and Sully are held at gunpoint and find Roman has secured the statue. Navarro urges Roman to open it. Inside is the mummy of El Dorado. Roman inhales the dust from the rotting corpse and begins to mutate. Navarro shoots the mutating Roman, as he had planned all along to steal the statue and sell the mutagen as a biological weapon. The statue is lifted out by helicopter as the mercenaries are attacked by the descendants. Nate jumps onto the net the statue is suspended in and is taken to a tanker ship nearby. They crash land after Elena kicks a mercenary out of the helicopter, whose M4 discharges, killing the pilot. Nathan fights his way to the deck, killing numerous mercenaries on the deck. Navarro and Nate fist fight until Nate knocks Navarro unconscious. As Nate pulls an injured Elena from the helicopter, Navarro regains consciousness and raises his gun, but Nate pushes the helicopter off the ship, the rope connecting the helicopter to the statue becoming tangled around his leg, plunging Navarro and the statue into the depths of the Pacific Ocean. Elena returns Francis Drake's ring that he had previously left at the corpse of Francis Drake, and she and Nate lean in to kiss when they are interrupted by Sully on a small speedboat, having escaped the island and killed several pirates, taking several boxes of treasure from them. Elena reminds Nate that because she lost her camera, he still owes her a story. As the boat sails towards the horizon, Nate assures her he will not break his promise. Uncharted 2 Amongst Thieves takes place 2 years after the events of Uncharted Drake's Fortune. The narrative opens with a quote attributed to Marco Polo. "I did not tell half of what I saw, for I knew I would not be believed." The story begins in the middle with a wounded Nathan Drake, waking up to find himself in a train hanging off a cliff with a bloody stomach wound. Through flashbacks, it is revealed that the former associate, Harry Flynn, and old girlfriend, Chloe Fraser, approached him with a job to steal a Mongolian oil lamp from an Istanbul museum. Nate accepts the job when he learns that the lamp may lead to the treasure of Marco Polo's lost fleet. The plot revolves around the doomed voyage home of Marco Polo from China in 1292. After spending almost 20 years in the court of the Mongol Emperor Kublai Khan, Marco Polo departed with 14 ships and over 600 passengers, but when he arrived in Persia a year and a half later, only 1 ship and 18 passengers remained. Polo never revealed what happened to the lost ships. Harry and Flynn acquired the lamp, which contains a map showing the lost fleet had been transporting the Shintamani stone from the mythical city of Shambhala, better known as Shangri-La, before being thrown ashore in Borneo by a tsunami. Taking the map, Flynn double-crosses Drake, who is arrested and in prison for 3 months. Chloe, who claims to have had no knowledge of Flynn's treachery, asks for the help of Drake's friend Sully to secure his release. Nate and Sully follow Flynn and his boss Zoran Lazarevic, a Siberian war criminal who is widely thought to be dead, to Borneo. With the help of Chloe, working within Lazarevic's camp as a mole, they discover that the Lost Fleet never actually possessed the Chintamani stone. They locate a tomb containing the bodies of Polo's passengers, as well as the Tibetan Purba, and a letter from Polo saying that the next clue is in Nepal in a temple. Flynn and his men appear in the tomb soon after and take the letter, while Nate and Sully escape by jumping off a cliff into a river. While Sullivan backs out, deciding that the quest is too risky, Nate and Chloe head to Nepal, finding conflict as Lazarevic's mercenary army ravages the city looking for the right temple. After surmising that the temple they are looking for is adorned with one of the symbols on the Purba, the couple survey the area from the rooftop of a local hotel, finding its location. En route to the temple, the pair runs into Elena Fisher and her cameraman Jeff, who are tracking down Lazarevic to prove he is still alive. The four reach the temple, but Elena is still worried about the fact that nothing adds up. Lazarevic is not in need of money. Nate and Chloe leave them anyway, and discover that the stone and Shambhala are in the Himalayas. As they are about to leave, they are ambushed, and Nate runs out to help Elena and Jeff, who are left at the temple entrance, to discover Jeff has been shot by one of Lazarevic's men. Despite Chloe's insistence to leave Jeff behind, Elena and Nate insist on helping him, and they push on until they are caught. Chloe reluctantly pulls her gun on Nate to protect her cover, while Lazarevic executes Jeff. While Lazarevic and Chloe leave for the train yard, Flynn is told to kill Nate and Elena. Elena punches Flynn when he tries to get her up, and the couple manages to escape. Elena is skeptical about helping Chloe, but ultimately decides to help Nate when his mind is resolved. Together they plan to catch up with Lazarevic's train on a stolen jeep driven by Elena. Nate is pushed by her on board the train and has to fight a bunch of soldiers, survive an attack from a helicopter twice, and fights Lieutenant Darza, who has possession of the Purba dagger. Drake eventually gets the dagger back after an intense fight. Darza regains consciousness and attempts to kill Drake, only to be killed by Chloe. But Chloe, who is upset about Nate having taken Elena and Jeff along earlier, refuses to leave with him. As the two argue, Flynn arrives and shoots Nate in the abdomen. Chloe then jumps in front of Flynn, giving Nate a chance to run. With Flynn distracted, soldiers pursue Drake until he is cornered. With no other option, Nate shoots a pile of propane tanks, killing Flynn's men and sending Nate's half of the train over a steep cliff. Returning to where the game began, Nate escapes the train and travels through a snowstorm, recovering the Purba among the wreckage before falling unconscious. He awakens in a Tibetan village, where he is reunited with Elena and introduced to a German man named Karl Schaefer. Schaefer tells Nate that the Purba is the key to finding Shambhala, but Nate tells him he is no longer interested. To convince him otherwise, Schaefer sends Nate and the village leader Tenzin to find the remains of the men in his expedition, who are looking for Shambhala and the stone 70 years earlier. Traveling through a series of caves to an ancient temple filled with Yeti-like creatures, Nate and Tenzin discover that Schaefer's men were SS members on an expedition and that he had killed them to protect the world from the power of the stone. They return to find Lazarevic's men attacking the village, Elena telling Nate that they are the reason for it. Tenzin and Nate go to fight the village, facing a tank in the process. After securing the village, Nate and Elena find out that Schaefer has been kidnapped, along with the Purba. They then track and fight Lazarevic's convoy to an abandoned monastery, getting blown off the edge of a cliff in the attempt, but they eventually gain entrance via the mountains and infiltrate it. The couple locate a mortally wounded Schaefer, who tells Nate he must destroy the Chintamani stone. Schaefer then succumbs to his wounds and dies. Nate then tells Elena that he is going to continue his search. Elena then says that she and Nate should split up to find the secret entrance to Shambhala faster, which he agrees to. Eventually, Nate locates Chloe, who surrenders the Purba after he promises to take Lazarevic down. Nate and Elena reunite and beat Lazarevic using the Purba to unlock the secret passage to Shambhala underneath the monastery. But Lazarevic corners them and forces Nate to choose out of Elena or Chloe, whose cover has been blown by Flynn. Nate agrees to his demands and is forced to go with Flynn to open the gate when it runs into troubles. When the gate opens, the group is attacked by the monsters from the ice caves, but Lazarevich manages to kill them. It is then revealed that they are actually human guardians of Shambhala, powered by the Chintamani stone, and dressed like monsters to scare off anyone who trespasses in the city. Just as Lazarevich prepares to kill Elena and Nate, Chloe protected by Flynn, another wave of guardians attacks, which allows them and Chloe to escape. Making their way to the top of the central temple, Nate discovers that the Chintamani stone is in fact a giant amber petrified blue resin embedded in a giant prehistoric tree of life. The true worth of Shambhala is the blue sap of the tree, which when ingested makes the drinker nearly invincible. As they prepare to go after Lazarevich, a wounded Flynn arrives and detonates a grenade, killing himself and seriously wounding Elena. Nate leaves Elena in Chloe's care and sets off to confront Lazarevich at the tree. Nate arrives just as Lazarevich drinks the tree's sap, which renders him nearly indestructible and heals his old wounds and scars. Detonating the pockets of explosive resin in the tree with his weapons, Nate defeats Lazarevich and leaves him to be brutally beaten and killed by the Guardians. Nate reunites with Chloe and Elena, and they escape the city as a series of explosions begins and destroys Shambhala. Nate sets Elena down when they get out of Shangri-La, but the signs don't look promising. Nate begs Elena not to leave him as it fades out. Back in the village, Chloe asks Nate if he loves Elena, which he does not deny. Chloe bids Nate goodbye as Sully leads a recovering Elena over to him. While Sully chases after Chloe, Elena and Nate pay their respects to Schaefer's grave before embracing. They share a kiss, and together, they walk over to the edge of a cliff and watch the sunset behind the mountains.
So, on a scale of 1 to 10, how scared were you that I was gonna die?
4.
4?
Yeah, why?
A 4.
Yeah.
You were at least an 8.
An 8?
You were a total 8.
An 8? Those guardian things were an 8.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, those were terrifying.
What's a 10?
Clowns?
Clowns over my death?
I hate
Clowns?
clowns. I hate clowns.
Oh my word. You thought I was dead.
No.
No, you thought I was gone.
No,
Yes,
no.
you did.
No, I
saw
had you all
shed
along.
tears. You shed a bunch of them.
Tears? It was raining.
No, it was not.
You were unconscious and it was
It was
raining.
totally sunny out and you were bawling.
It wasn't sunny. You were unconscious.
Whatever. I kept your tears in a jar. I have proof.
I'll give you 5. How's that?
Uncharted 3: Drake's Deception takes place 2 years after the events of Uncharted 2. Sometime after Uncharted 2, Nate and Elena got married, but Nate's phobia of commitment and lust for adventure placed a great strain on their marriage, and the two separated. The story begins with Nate and Sully entering a pub in London to meet with a man named Talbot, who is interested in purchasing Nate's ring. During the meeting, Nate and Sully accuse Talbot of offering them counterfeit banknotes, and a fight ensues. After fighting their way past Talbot's thugs, Nate and Sully emerge in an alleyway, where they are surrounded and subdued by Charlie Cutter. They are then approached by Talbot's client, Catherine Marlowe, who steals Nate's ring. Nate attempts to go after her, but Cutter guns him and Sully down, seemingly killing them. The story then flashes back 20 years earlier. A teenage Nathan Drake explores a museum in Cartagena, Colombia, in search of Sir Francis Drake's ring, but is thrown out after guards suspect him of being a thief. Intrigued by the actions of Victor Sullivan, who he does not know at this point, Nate follows Sully to a keymaker and pickpockets him before returning to the museum. He steals the ring, but before he can leave, is caught by Marlowe, her henchman and Sully, who is working for her. Nate flees with the ring, with Marlowe's agents in pursuit, but Sully rescues Nate from the agents and decides to act as a mentor to him. Returning to the present day, it is revealed that the meeting was an elaborate setup by Nate and Sully to get closer to Marlowe, with Cutter being an old friend of theirs. With the help of Chloe Frazier, they traced Marlowe's car to a hidden library, where they managed to retrieve T.E. Lawrence's notebook and a map showing Francis Drake's secret voyage to Arabia, where he was commissioned by Queen Elizabeth I to search for the lost city of Ubar. Using these items, Nate works out that the clues in the city's location lie in the Crusaders' crypts and a French chateau and a Syrian citadel. Nate and Sully head to eastern France and locate the long-abandoned chateau in a dense forest. They find one half of an amulet inside the crypt, but the two are ambushed by Talbot, who takes the amulet and sets the chateau on fire. Nate and Sully escape and quickly head to Syria, fearing that Chloe and Cutter, who traveled to the Syrian citadel, may have been followed as well. In Syria, Nate and Sully meet up with Chloe and Cutter, who have learned that Marlowe is the head of an order dating back 4 centuries. The order seeks to gain power by exploiting the fears of their enemies. During their quest, Cutter gets shot by a dart containing hallucinogens, which forces him to give his gun and notebook to Talbot. The group reaches the second crypt and find the other half of the amulet, revealing the location of the next clue in Yemen. However, while trying to exit the citadel, Cutter is cornered by Marlowe and Talbot, forcing him to hand over the amulet piece. Although Nate, Sully, Chloe, and Cutter manage to escape, Cutter breaks his leg in the process, forcing him and Chloe to back out for the rest of the game, while Nate and Sully travel to Yemen on their own. Drake follows Sully's advice to meet with his wife, Elena Fisher, recently estranged. Though the two argue over the fact that Elena is still wearing her wedding ring and how Nate seems to be obsessed with his quest, Elena still helps Nate and Sully, giving them a tour of the city. They eventually locate the underground tomb where they discover the location of the lost city, as well as evidence that Sir Francis Drake had also found the tomb, and that what he learned there caused him to abandon his mission. Back above ground, Nate is shot with a dart containing hallucinogens. After stumbling away alone, Nate wakes up outside a cafe with Marlowe and Talbot. Here, Marlowe comments on his past and his relationship with Sully, and even threatens Elena if he does not cooperate. When Talbot gets news of Sully's location, Nate breaks free and gives chase to Talbot throughout the city. However, Nate is then knocked out by Ramses, a pirate working for Marlowe. Ramses interrogates Nate for information about Iram of the Pillars. When Nate refuses to cooperate, Ramses claims to have captured Sully. Nate manages to escape captivity and eventually reaches the cruise ship, where Sully is captured. Nate discovers Sullivan sitting on a chair in the cargo hold with a fabric bag on his head, but discovers it is a dummy. Ramses and his men appear and reveal that Ramses never had Sullivan. Ramses stumbles to safety after being shot by Nate. Nate then throws a grenade and the ensuing battle, which results in a large explosion rupturing the ship's hull. Eventually, the excess water causes the whole vessel to roll 90 degrees and begins sinking. After navigating through the capsized ship, Nate finds himself in the overturned ballroom. A mortally wounded Ramses reappears and shoots the glass roof, resulting in water rapidly flooding in, killing himself in the process. Nate escapes the overturned ship and washes back onto shore. He's reunited with Elena, but she informs him that Sully was captured by Marlowe's men and was taken on a convoy into the Rub al Khali desert, but they may be able to rescue him if they stow away on a cargo plane, due to deliver supplies to Marlowe's convoy at dawn. The two of them infiltrate the airstrip, where they eventually reach a high wall. Nate gets to the other side, but refuses to help Elena up, and claims he doesn't want to risk losing Elena again. She understands and accepts this, and eventually leaves using a nearby jeep. Nate tries to reach the plane as it begins its take to run off, but ultimately fails. Elena reappears in the jeep and picks him up, allowing him to enter the plane through one of the landing gear bay doors, just as the plane lifts off. Nate is soon discovered by Marlowe's men on board, and a shootout ensues, resulting in a fire on board, leading to a massive decompression which tears the plane apart and sucks Nate out. Falling through the sky, Nate collides with a falling supply crate and deploys the crate's unused parachute. He is able to land safely on the desert floor. Nate finds a weapon in the wreckage and starts the journey through the desert. After wandering through the desert, suffering from heat exhaustion, severe thirst, and experiencing hallucination and mirages, Nate arrives at a ghost town in the desert where he is attacked by Marlowe's men. A troop of men on horseback, led by Salim, appear and ride to Nate's rescue. At the horsemen's encampment, Salim tells Nate that the city of Ubar was doomed thousands of years ago by King Solomon when he imprisoned evil jinn within a brass vessel and cast it into the heart of the city. He agrees to help Nate and leads him to the convoy, spotted by his scouts. Nate and Salim destroy the convoy and rescue Sully. Salim then instructs Nate and Sully to follow him into a nearby sandstorm, but the pair lose him amidst the dust, and they realize that they arrived at the gates of Ubar. Upon entering Ubar, Nate and Sully come across a sophisticated water fountain that Nate drinks from. Suddenly, Talbot appears and shoots Sully, apparently killing him. Overcome by rage over Sully's death, Nate gives chase and has to fight more of Marlowe's men, who seem to have been possessed by the jinn, engulfing themselves in flames, as well as showing the ability to teleport. Nate eventually comes to his senses and finds Sully alive. The true mystery of what happened to the people of Ubar thousands of years ago becomes apparent. When King Solomon cast the brass vessel into the depths of the city, it fell into the water and began to taint the water with a powerful hallucinogenic agent. The people were subsequently driven mad, and civilization within the city collapsed. Nate realizes that the vessel is what Queen Elizabeth had sent Sir Francis Drake to find, but after learning the consequences of his quest, Drake abandoned his mission and returns to England. Nate and Sully search the city and locate Marlowe, who is using a winch to pull the brass object from the water. Nate and Sully destroy the winch, and the explosion sets off a chain reaction throughout the entire city, causing it to collapse. Nate and Sully attempt to escape the crumbling city and encounter Marlowe and Talbot shortly before the floor collapses. Throwing Marlowe into a pit of quicksand, Nate tries to save her, but is unable to pull her out, and Marlowe is submerged in the sand, taking Drake's ring with her. After desperately trying to reach the edge of a giant sinkhole that the city has now become, Nate and Sully are intercepted by Talbot, close to the exit. An enraged Talbot attempts to kill Nate and Sully, but after a brutal fight, he is shot by Nate and falls out of sight. At the city gates, Salim rides in on his horse and leads Nate and Sully to safety as the city is engulfed by the desert sands. Nate and Sully return to the airport in Yemen, where Sully explains why he took such an interest in the young Nate. He then gives back Nate's wedding ring, which he secretly kept safe when Drake and Elena separated. Nate turns to see Elena joining them. The two embrace each other, and the three fly back home on Sully's new seaplane.
Let's get out of here, huh?
Yeah.
Come on, we're this way.
But
Come on. Trust me.
what are you up to? No way.
It's not as nice as the one you two wrecked 4 years ago, but it'll do. Come on. Let's see if I can remember how to fly the goddamn thing.
Hey, this has parachutes, right?
Oh, yeah.
3.
More or less.